Welcome everybody. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate some of Microsoft Word's table tools. We'll start by creating a simple table. From the Insert tab, I'll choose Table, and I'll highlight a table that's 3 columns by 3 rows in size. Next, I'm going to type in the word Sales Reps, and I want to enter more rows in this one cell. I have two options. I can either use the Enter key to drop down with a paragraph break, or I can hit Shift Enter to drop down with a line break. The difference is subtle, but it has to do with how the cell behaves. I'm going to hit the Enter key, and I'll type in Steve, Enter, Mike, Enter, Dan. And you can see the list that I have here using the paragraph break, and I'll demonstrate the difference between the line break in just a second. But I want to indent Steve, Mike, and Dan's names, so I'll put my cursor right in front of Steve. I'll hit Control-Tab. In front of Mike, hit Control-Tab, and Dan, hit Control-Tab. Now this is important because the Tab key works differently in a table. Had I just hit the Tab key alone, it advances me to each cell, and that's not really what I wanted in this case. So I wanted to have a little bit of an indent, and there it is. Now, if I want to select the cell, I can place my cursor here at the bottom row and triple click, 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 and it selects the entire contents of the cell. If I had used line breaks, then that would not happen. The line breaks break a little bit differently, and that can be problematic when you want to be able to select cells. But on the other hand, if you want to format rows individually, you need the paragraph breaks, because a line break is going to make all the text in the cell seem like one line, and it's going to allow you to apply the format to the entire cell with one command. There's another way to select the entire cell as well. By moving my cursor to the lower left corner, you see that my cursor changes into a northeasterly arrow, and I can click, and that's another way to select the contents of a cell. Or if I want to select multiple cells, I can simply click in a cell, hold the mouse button down, and drag to select as many or as few cells as I want. Continuing on, the next thing I want to show is selecting a row or a column, which is very easy. Just in the margin, just click in the margin next to the row you want to select, or click and hold to select as many rows as you want. You can do the exact same thing with a column as well. I can click to select a column, or I can hold that down and my mouse button, and I can select multiple columns. And you have to know how to select cells, rows, and columns in order to apply a lot of the tools that we're talking about here. The next thing we want to look at is merging cells. If I want to merge some cells together, let's say these two cells, I highlight both of them, and then I right mouse click and choose Merge Cells. And now I've created more of a complex table layout, because it's not the same number of rows and columns on each throughout the table. Next, we're going to put in some diagonal cells. So as an example there, I'm going to make a cell a little bit larger, and I'm going to choose the cell which opens up my table tools. I'm going to go to the Layout tab and click on the Draw Table option. With the Draw Table option, my cursor changes into a little pencil icon, and I can click from one corner down to another corner. Now that I've done this, the next thing we want to do is we want to type. So for example, I might type the word Texas here. I'm going to hit the Enter key, and then I'll drop down and I'll type Dallas. And let's make that a little bit narrower. Now to understand diagonal cells, you must realize you're not really breaking that cell into two pieces. It just looks like you are. So now I'm going to come up here and highlight the word Texas, and I'm going to format that to be right justified. And I'll keep the Dallas at left justified. I'll highlight both of those, make the font a little bit bigger and bolder, just so it stands out. I can copy this as well, Control C, and then Control V, and I can put here Houston, and we'll put Austin, Texas right there. And then we'll come back up to our layout, draw table, and we'll put diagonals in here as well. Sometimes people find that this is a little bit better way to organize their headings in a table, and sometimes not. Certainly up to you. The next tool we want to talk about is cell margins. We can see cell margins here. The sales rep, the word actually begins a few pixels over from the edge, and maybe you want to maximize use in your cells. So the way we'll do that is we'll highlight this cell, right mouse click and choose Table Properties. We'll go to the Cell tab, click Options, and uncheck the box that says Same as Whole Table, and we'll make the left margin smaller. Maybe we'll leave 2/100ths of a margin for the left and the right. And then you'll see when I click OK, you'll watch this area, the sales rep will scoot over a little bit. That way I can get a little bit more data and text into my cells. And sometimes you want to make that minute adjustment. Sometimes you want to auto-fit text. And so let's do that here. I'm going to highlight this third row, right mouse click. I'll choose Table Properties. I'll come back to my options and we'll click the Fit Text option. Now what that does is now automatically as I type, let's just type in east, and we'll come up here and type west, and then we'll type northeast. You can see what's happening as I type is I've got even justification all the way across my cell, and as I type more letters, and I'll type more letters here so you can see, the kerning is automatic so that your entire column entry fits on one row. And sometimes you want that, especially in your column headings. But if you have a lot of column headings to type in, using this auto fit technique can prevent you from having to do a lot of formatting later. You just type in whatever headings you want and work from there. Some people like this tool, some people don't. It really depends on what you're typing in. In this case, the east and the west are just too little text for this tool, and then in the third column I've typed in too much text for this tool probably, but you do get the idea. The next thing I want to talk about is pasting data into cells. Sometimes what you're doing is fairly complicated, and so what you really want to do is write your data outside the table. I'll type sales reps here, then we'll type in Steve, Mike, and Dan as an example. I'll highlight Steve, Mike, and Dan and number the list. And now I can highlight this. Let's create a new row. I don't want that format there. Let me make a new table just so you can see this. Insert table. And what I can do is highlight the sales reps Steve, Mike, and Dan. I can copy that or cut it and then paste it. And you'll see that that actually works quite well. So sometimes if you are having trouble typing into a cell, it's not behaving the way you want, maybe, just maybe, it's better to type outside the table and cut and paste that data into your table. You can also do the same thing from Excel. Let's take a look at that. Here in Excel, I have a little table. It's just some cells of data that I've already put in just for our purposes here. I'm going to highlight 4 rows and I'm going to copy those. And then I'm going to paste them into a table. And since I have 4 rows, you might say, well, how do you do that? Do you have to have a table that's the same size like I have here and paste? That's what some people try to do, but that's a mistake, and I'll show why. If I paste this in, you can see it gives me not really what I wanted. It pastes the entire contents from Excel into each individual cell. That's not what I wanted. Here's what you really do. You come down to a blank part of the Word and you just simply paste. And when you paste Excel data into Word, it automatically pastes as a table. It doesn't show lines or borders by default, but you can add those if you would like. You can right mouse click and tell it to view lines or add lines to your table. But typing data into Excel or into elsewhere in Word and then paste it into a table might be a good idea in some cases. Finally, what we want to do is talk about converting tables to text and text to tables, and then we'll talk about table size. So if we have data, and let's do it again. Let's do this. Sales reps, Steve, Mike, and Dan. And maybe I want this to be a table. So I can highlight this and choose Insert Table, and it will convert text to table. And there's a dialog box that pops up, and I can indicate exactly how many columns I want. The default here is auto-detected at 1 column, but I might want to put 2 columns in, or 3 or 4, and you can indicate how many rows you want. We'll just take the default and click OK. And now you can see what's happened is automatically our text has been converted to a table. And you can do the reverse. You can come up here in the layout. There's an option in here to convert. I don't know if you can see it. It's just off the video frame, but there's an option here to convert to text, which I'll click, and I can tell it to look at the paragraph marks, and then it converts it back to text. Now, the reason I show you that is because often when you're typing into tables, if you're having problems, you can simply convert it back to text, type in a word a little more, and then convert it back to a table. And sometimes that little procedure makes it easier to accomplish the type of table entries you want. Finally, let's talk about sizing our table. Let's take this third one right here. One of the things you can do is put your cursor here at the edge until you get a cursor that's a little double arrow, double line cursor, and you can click and drag that in. Now what that does is it resizes that 1 column only. But if you hold the Shift key down, let me do that again, Shift key. Well, we've selected the whole thing here. We're going to, don't know why that table isn't resizing completely. What I did was I resized 1 column right there. And now to make all the column widths the same, I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to choose Distribute Columns Evenly. And that makes all 3 of my columns the same width. And so sometimes that's a fairly easy way to adjust your column, is make the last column edge where you want the entire table to be, and then use the automatic adjust columns to the same size. You can also do the same thing with rows. If we right mouse click here, you can see that there's an option to distribute rows evenly, and then that makes all your rows the same size as the top row, and that makes it fairly easy for you to come up with a table that's more attractive and appealing, easier to read. But I hope some of these tips for working with tables are useful to you.